Thank you, Minister Patel, Program Director, Labour, community and business leaders who are here, Your Excellencies, ambassadors, and high commissioners, premiers of our various provinces who are here, mayors of our various cities and towns, ministers and deputy ministers, and ladies and gentlemen. It was Minister Patel who, after laughing at me in trying to wear a mask in one of the addresses to the nation, who put me down and taught me how to wear my mask. Today I've become an expert, and I'm quite happy to give free lessons on wearing a mask. Thank you very much, Minister Patel, for having taught me so well. It is indeed a great pleasure to see so many of you here, although in much limited numbers, attending our third South Africa Investment Conference. I would like to extend a particular word of welcome to those who are outside the shores of our country, who are attending this conference, but more importantly, the South Africa Tomorrow Conference in the United States. But we also want to welcome those who are attending this conference and following its proceedings from other parts of the world, in Europe, on our own continent, in Asia, and a number of other places. I'd like to extend a word of welcome to all of you for being part of this conference. It is quite a historic conference because it is being held under very different conditions from the conditions that prevailed when we first held our two conferences. Over the past 2 years, this conference has earned its place right at the center of our economic agenda, if you like, our political economy agenda. It is an expression of our commitment to achieve economic growth through being able to have solidified strong partnerships with our key role players, being labor, communities, as well as business, to have succeeded to not only hold this conference in the way that we are, with their active participation, but also to have crafted a recovery plan working with them. We meet this year at a time of great uncertainty and upheaval across the world. Most of the delegates participating in this year's conference are doing so virtually. There are about 1,700 delegates who would ordinarily have been part of this conference, but they are elsewhere in the world because we are living in different times. And it is a reminder of the extraordinary difficult situation that we are in, not only as a nation, but as the peoples of the world. Since the start of the coronavirus pandemic, we have understood that the best way to protect the economy and possibly the economies of various other countries is to bring this pandemic under control. As we confront this crisis and as we look to the future, I am reminded of why the protea, South Africa's national flower, is as beautiful and as robust as it is. The protea has survived for millions of years, as many of us will know. Like most of the fynbos, which is native to this country, it settled into a symbiotic relationship with the elements such as wildfires, wind, and many others, so that it can continue existing and surviving. The protea has a thick underground stem which allows it to endure significant heat and the effects of various elements. In the aftermath of a fire, dominant buds of the protea survive and the protea releases its seed. The land comes back to life even much more richer than it did before. In many ways, it exemplifies how a phoenix rises from the ashes. This is the situation we find ourselves in today as a nation. The coronavirus pandemic has severely damaged our economy, causing great economic contraction in decades and driving the unemployment rate to its highest level ever in the history of our country. In the wake of this pandemic, our foremost task now is to rebuild our economy. This must be akin to how the protea, our beautiful national flower, germinates after a fire. Our strategic approach must be to restore our economy to what it was, but we need to do much more to make it even more vibrant, more resilient, and much more inclusive. While this time of rebuilding our economy is fraught with risk, with great danger, with hardship and difficulty, it is also a time of great opportunity for all of us as economic players. We have embarked on a mission of economic reconstruction as well as recovery, building on the successes of attracting investment we have achieved over the past 2 years. Since April 2018, when we announced our ambitious target to attract 1.2 trillion rand of investment over 5 years, local as well as international investors have made commitments to invest approximately 664 billion rand. Investment commitments that were announced at our 2 previous conferences. At this year's conference, we want to consolidate the commitments that have been made to date to ensure that they are realized, to make sure that these were not just statements and announcements that were pronounced by corporate leaders. We want to see this 664 billion rand translated into new factories, production lines, mining operations, retail outlets, as well as infrastructure. We want to see it translated, yes, into new jobs, new skills, and new economic activities. We have been closely tracking the implementation of the 102 projects that were announced at the last 2 conferences. 172 billion of the committed amount has been spent on projects that were announced to date. This is just over a quarter of the commitments that were made in 2018 and 2019. These projects alone portray an economy with exciting opportunities for growth across a wide range of diverse industries in our economy. The sector that has seen the greatest flow of investment from these commitments is the mining sector and mineral beneficiation, with just over 63.6 billion rand having been spent to date, and that is already in the ground. The flow of investment into the ICT sector currently stands at 31 billion. Our automotive sector has attracted some 23 billion rand of investments that have already flown. Other sectors that have seen substantial actual investment flow so far include the property and hospitality sector at 8.2 billion, the forestry and paper and pulp at some 6.3 billion, fast-moving consumer goods at 6 billion, and financial services at 5.6 billion. 19 investment projects from the last 2 years have already been completed or launched. A further 44 projects representing 57% of the total investment commitment are under construction as we speak, with another 12 projects in the early stages of implementation. Unfortunately, 21 projects representing around 10% total commitments have either been delayed or are on hold as a result of the coronavirus pandemic. Something which is quite understandable, because every company that made commitments has to deal with its own unique circumstances. This means that despite the severe disruption of the last few months, the vast majority of projects are making steady progress as we move on. Significantly, these investments are taking place throughout the country, with projects planned or underway in all 8 metropolitan municipalities and 26 district municipalities in all our provinces. We are already beginning to see the benefits of the investment commitments. A new pharmaceutical manufacturing plant built by Aspen Pharmacare in Nelson Mandela Bay, which was one of the first investment pledges at our inaugural conference, has reached a preliminary agreement with Johnson & Johnson to manufacture and package Johnson & Johnson's COVID-19 candidate vaccine. Aspen has been able to build further capability to manufacture vaccines following the investment commitment they announced at our inaugural conference. They tell me that they have invested north of 1 billion rand, an announcement that they made at our investment conference. That was a clear sign of confidence in the investability, if one can use that word, of our country. This would position the Eastern Cape as a global hub for the manufacturing of vaccines and other pharmaceutical products. The most recent project to be commissioned is a new LPG storage facility built by Bidvest and Petrodec in Richards Bay, the largest of its kind in the world, which will bolster the supply of liquefied petroleum gas to South Africa and to the entire region. Earlier this year, Amazon Web Services launched 3 new data centers in Cape Town, and Terraco is expanding on its commitment at last year's conference to build the largest data center in Africa. Nissan will start production of their 3 billion rand production plant for the Nevada Baki in 2021, and I was invited to the launch thereof. Delisu Holdings, a black industrialist company manufacturing chemicals, will be commissioning their factory in December of this year. The Toronto Group, another beneficiary of our Black Industrialist program, broke new ground on their green charcoal facility in August this year in the midst of the pandemic. Poultry producers such as Astral have reached commercial operation of new facilities and are now expanding even further as part of commitments in the South African Poultry Master Plan. Due to the disruption caused by the coronavirus pandemic to the global economy and our own economy, we decided that this year's conference should focus on implementation of investment commitments that have already been made. Yet, as we have found in preparation for this conference, there is still a strong appetite for investment in our own economy. One would have thought that with coronavirus, investors would start fleeing and rushing to other markets. We have found the opposite to be true. We're finding that there are quite a number of investors who are still interested in this market as they see great opportunities in the South African market. I'm therefore pleased to announce that there are over 50 companies that will be making commitments at this year's investment conference. We will hear about these later. These commitments are much more than statements of intent. These commitments are a form of a compact between the companies themselves, their shareholders, and their stakeholders. These are compacts that companies enter into with communities, the communities that they serve, or communities where their operations are. These are compacts that they also make with their workers and their unions, with municipalities in which they operate, and broader society. So these commitments are not made lightly, and I would say that any company that does have the courage to stand up on this podium and make a commitment, it must know that it is making a commitment that is classified as a compact with the key role players in the South African community. These compacts essentially place a responsibility on all involved to support the implementation of these commitments and work together to ensure that they are indeed realized. So they should go beyond just empty words. As we have seen, these commitments do actually translate into new and improved facilities, expanding production, creating employment, and opening up new markets for those corporates. This progress is testament not only to the resilience of our economy, but also the huge potential that investors see in our economy. As we meet here, the African continent stands on the cusp of a new era in economic development. In January of next year, the African Continental Free Trade Area will take effect. Had it not been for coronavirus, it would have taken effect already. We will be establishing a continental market of some 1.3 billion people with a combined GDP in the region of $2.3 trillion. This is going to be the biggest market of so many people, single and united, possibly the biggest. There are other markets, China and many others, but it is quite historic for our continent to have developed to a point where we've now embraced the creation of a market like this. With its advanced infrastructure, diverse economy, sophisticated capital markets, and developed manufacturing capacity, our own country, South Africa, is in the ideal location for any company wanting to reach the continental market with greater effectiveness from a cost and from a logistical point of view. We are well located, much as we are right at the bottom of the continent. All these endowments that we have stand us in good stead. A more than 3,000-kilometer coastline with wonderful infrastructure ports and being able to launch into the entire continent. So any company that has a huge appetite for this market on the continent should know that South Africa is the entry to this market. As we outlined in our Economic Reconstruction and Recovery Plan, we are pushing ahead with the critical reforms that we have enunciated in that plan. Our energy sector is undergoing a paradigm shift as our power utility, Eskom, is being restructured into various entities for generation, transmission, and distribution. This begins with the establishment of the transmission subsidiary as the basis for a competitive electricity supply market, which Eskom is moving ahead with great vigor. This will improve efficiency and transparency and lay the basis for greater competition and lower energy costs. We are also rapidly expanding our generation capacity, which will see a substantial increase in the contribution of renewable energy sources, battery storage, and gas technology. Requests for proposals will be issued in December 2020 to enable the opening of various bid windows, including bid window 5 of our renewable energy program. We have recently taken steps to enable greater self-generation and allow local municipalities to generate their own power. We will complete the allocation of high-demand spectrum by March of 2021 to enable new investment in our telecommunications infrastructure and open the way for the digital economy to truly take effect in our country. We have already reduced the cost of data through a competition commission settlement with the country's mobile companies, which resulted in a 30% drop in the cost of key data bundles. At last year's investment conference, we witnessed the signing of master plans for the poultry sector and the clothing, textile, and footwear sector. These plans, together with the automotive sector plan, have resulted in real progress and reignited the growth prospects of these sectors. And the planning thereof was arrived at by active participation or through active participation of all the key players in those sectors. On Monday this week, Minister Ibrahim Patel and Minister Toko Didiza signed the Sugar Master Plan with industry stakeholders. Now, the plan was developed in partnership with sugarcane growers, and some of whom are small growers out there in the rural parts of our country. They participated through their various organizations and formations in helping to craft this plan. It also had and enjoyed the participation of the millers, the food producers, beverage bottlers, as well as organized labor. It provides a framework for a competitive industry that is still Africa's largest sugar producer. We are now working to finalize master plans in the digital economy, the forestry and agriculture and agro-processing, as well as creative industries, aerospace and defense, renewable energy, steel and metal fabrication, and furniture. Now, we are taking our time to craft all these master plans where we bring in the key role players so that everyone agrees what the growth path of their sector is likely to be. Once the plan is negotiated and agreed upon, there's a great deal of enthusiasm, great deal of excitement, but more importantly, there are greater plans for investment and job creation in those various sectors of our economy. In responding to the coronavirus emergency, South Africa has demonstrated its capacity for innovation, collaboration, and versatility. With the support of the Solidarity Fund, the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research, CSIR, which is government-owned, as well as the country's automotive sector, have over the last few months developed and manufactured something that we thought would take us a long time to manufacture. They've manufactured 20,000 ventilators for COVID-19 patients. I recall at the beginning of the pandemic talking to a number of heads of state where we were campaigning and lobbying for ventilators to be made available to our country. I remember speaking to President Trump, and he asked me how many ventilators we needed. I said we needed 10,000 ventilators. He said, wow, you are now behaving like China and India. You want so many. I said, that's precisely the point about us South Africans. We want it all. And we were then able to manufacture 20,000. And this has happened because of the ingenuity, the creativity of our own research capability. The country has increased its capacity to produce N95 medical face masks from 6 million a month at the start of the pandemic to around 13 million masks a month now. I would like to commend those companies that have taken steps working with government to increase the level of local content in their supply chains. And a number of companies have taken heed of this message that government is spending about localization. And we want this message to continue spreading on an ongoing basis. These companies are demonstrating what is possible when stakeholders work together to deepen local production. We have followed through on our commitment to accelerate land reform in a way that addresses the profound injustices of our horrible and sad past and ensure social stability while providing strong protection for property rights and expanding agricultural production. We have demonstrated that these objectives that we have about providing justice to the majority of our people whose land was taken away can be achieved when we all work together. We have introduced an expropriation bill in the National Assembly to provide greater certainty on this issue. And we have also released 700,000 hectares of vacant and underutilized state-owned land to support our land reform efforts. We have taken a firm stand against corruption and state capture. We continue to strengthen as well as capacitate our law enforcement agencies, and we are working to restore the integrity, the efficacy, and the credibility of our law enforcement agencies that were so badly captured in the past. We have installed capable and experienced managers at our state-owned enterprises and continue to do so on an ongoing basis. And despite many challenges and problems, we have begun the work of turning turning the majority of the state-owned enterprises around. Through our economic recovery and reconstruction plan, we are pursuing a few high-impact priorities and focusing relentlessly on the issue of implementation. In our book now, what is clearly written is implementation, implementation, and implementation. The priorities that we are focused on now include a massive infrastructure build program that is going to spread throughout the length and the breadth of our country in all the provinces, an employment stimulus plan to create and support jobs for many of our people, and immediate steps to achieve energy security, which I spoke about earlier, and measures to deepen local industrialization and localization, as well as African integration. The private sector is vital to the achievement of all these priorities and shifting economic trajectory of our country. It cannot be done without the participation of the private sector. It can also not be done without the participation of labor. And it also cannot be done without the participation of our communities. We need to look this as an all-encompassing effort that we have put together to take our country forward. This is particularly true of our infrastructure program, which relies on the private sector investment in new infrastructure projects to create efficient, world-class network infrastructure and boost aggregate demand. Through the infrastructure fund, public funds will be used to leverage private investment at a much larger scale. To drive the delivery of key reforms, we have established what we call the Operation Vulindlela, with a dedicated team from the Presidency and the National Treasury. And this is the team that is going to drive the implementation of the various projects as well as the reforms that we have announced. Vulindlela means open the way in isiZulu and isiXhosa. It's opening the way, and that's precisely what we seek to do with our economy. Operation Vulindlela will open the way for high-impact economic reforms in network industries such as energy, water, telecommunications, and transport, as well as attracting critical skills that we so need and streamlining processes such as visa regimes and many others. We will focus on a number of priority reforms with clear time frames and make sure they are effectively and swiftly executed. The team reports directly to me with regards to the progress on implementation, with a team of ministers having oversight on what actually is taking place. In every part of our country, from the deserts of the Northern Cape to the shores of the Eastern Cape and KwaZulu-Natal, from the high rises of Gauteng to the valleys of Mpumalanga and Limpopo, from the wide expanses of the Free State and Northwest to the splendor of the Western Cape, we are seeing the emergence of green shoots of growth. We see them on an ongoing basis despite the ravages of the coronavirus. We are positioning South Africa as a leading market for global business services, leveraging our unique strengths in consumer service, broadband infrastructure, and also the skill base that our country does have. We are rebuilding our manufacturing capacity, strengthening it where it needs to be strengthened through the establishment of special economic zones and the revitalization of our industrial parks. a number of which have been laid to be derelict over a number of years. Our mining sector has proved resilient through the worst of the pandemic and is benefiting from renewed demand for our strategic minerals, and we have plenty of them. Our financial services sector remains among the strongest and best regulated financial services sector in the world, thus infusing a lot of confidence as it has great credibility and integrity. The discovery of significant natural gas reserves off our southern coast offers the promise of a new surge in investment in our rich mineral resources or natural resources. I would like to believe that many of you would-be investors and those who have invested in the past are here, participating both here and on the virtual platform because you believe in the potential of South Africa. You are here and participating because you do believe in the South African story, that it is a story of renewal. It is a story of a country that is not only picking itself up from the devastation of the coronavirus, but it is a country that is determined to surge forward, to grow, to create jobs, to give its people a better life. You are also here because you believe in the strength of our institutions and in our robust and vibrant democracy. You are also here because you believe in our stable macroeconomic framework and in our commitment, even under these very difficult and trying circumstances, to maintaining a path of fiscal responsibility. You believe in our efforts to rebuild the state, to make our state to be much more capable than it is, and to turn the tide on corruption and state capture. The signs of turning this tide are already there. They are visible and they are there for everyone to see. There is a new determination, there is a new focus on bringing about greater capability in our state and dealing with the malfeasance that we have had. You see the progress we have made, and you recognize your own role as partners as well as investors in our future, in working with us to achieve the ambitions, the great ambitions that we have set for ourselves. And it is in this regard that South Africans will not settle for anything less. They have great ambitions. They want the best of what their country can give. And time again, South Africa has proven its ability to overcome great challenges and emerge stronger and stronger. We are at that point right now. Let the protea that adorns our national coat of arms, we have flourished even like the protea that adorns our national coat of arms. We have flourished even in the harshest of environments. Even with the fire that we've been exposed to, we can and we will prevail. We've come a long way, and we still have a long way to go. Now is the time to grow anew, but this time we'd like to work with the private sector, with labor, with our communities, and this is now the time for those who would like to benefit from the opportunities and the growth that the South African economy has to give. This is the time to invest. I therefore invite you to participate in this conference, but make sure that you have your checkbooks with you, because we want your investments to stay here in South Africa. Thank you very much.